Okay, gentlemen, it's 4:30, you're live.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the workshop of the Board of County Commissioners for June 13th. First thing on our agenda, we have a leadership training discussion with Victor and Cindy Delgado. Come on forward.
Go ahead and come to
There's
the
a
table
mic.
and then make sure the microphone is on.
And you have to get really close to it
Okay,
so that
sounds good.
that people that are viewing us on YouTube can actually hear it.
Okay,
All right?
sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
And so, Commissioners, just as a brief bit of background for you on this, Bonnie had reached out to the Carnegie Institute, Dale Carnegie, when researching programs for the wellness team and considering leadership and interaction amongst department head and elected officials. And so she originally kicked off the conversation, and Mr. and Mrs. Delgado are here to tell us what they can do for us. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Powers. So we have a handout, is that okay?
You bet.
bet. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So thank you all for the opportunity to talk with you today. We certainly appreciate it. We had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Powers back in March of this year. And so we provided you a copy of the conversation that we had with him and Ms. Loving at that time. And so we just wanted to provide further opportunity to give you information on that today and then answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
All right?
You bet.
We don't know how familiar you are with Dale Carnegie, if people have familiarity or not, so we brought just a couple of slides to give an understanding of that. Dale Carnegie is a global training organization started by Mr. Carnegie back in 1912, and we're really proud of our heritage because it means that what we do works, or we wouldn't still be here. So we have had the chance to work with over 8 million people in that time. And in the next slide, we show that we're across the globe, located in over 200 different locations. So Dale Carnegie has the global reach, but local offices through a franchise type distribution model. So Victor and I have the opportunity to work with Dale Carnegie in Southern Colorado, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, this corridor of the Southwest, and then also in the San Joaquin Valley of California, the Agricultural Center. And so what we've done is we've had the chance then to work with Jack and Bonnie, and focusing on that, we're bringing the local touch to Dale Carnegie. So we have the worldwide corporation that provides a lot of the information. On the next slide shows our accreditations. We bring a lot of accreditation, the ISO certifications, and things as part of our repertoire. But we have the local touch ourselves. 2 slides forward tells a little bit more about Victor and myself. Victor's originally from New Mexico. I can let you mention about you.
Yes, I grew up in the Roswell area, and I went to school in Cortez, then moved to Albuquerque. I've been with Dale Carnegie almost 39 years, and those are the companies that I have worked with in the area, and then I also worked with some in California.
Yeah. And then I've been with Dale Carnegie for over 20 years and joined Victor in New Mexico a few years ago. And so we've had a chance to kind of work across the area, and we became familiar with Shaq and with Bonnie through Danny at the Colorado Agricultural Leadership Program, the CALP program here locally. And so we began our conversation talking about, as he mentioned, leadership for the department heads and how we can support their skill, their leadership, and their capabilities. So in the document provided on page 3, it talks about the executive summary of our conversation, and we talk about some of the different areas that we discussed, things that were about how do we help support the leadership from communications, building greater morale, increasing engagement and those different conversations all the way across the different departments, from the department heads through supervisors to employees, making sure employees feel valued, making sure the leadership is providing the morale, the engagement to help drive the results, needed in the area. And overcoming some of the challenges that can happen, whether it's different types of leadership background and different, what we call languages of leadership, or different methods that can begin to either conflict or not be in the same direction. How do we help everybody move in the same direction so that there can be greater effectiveness and efficiency across all of the different department heads, and support them in the work that they do? And so in doing so, we provided 3 different recommendations, and the concept was to show 3 different options of what we could do, and these different options will be further defined upon going forward with the project. So if they say, yes, this is a good idea, we would refine as to which one of those 3 we recommend. So overall, in a large picture, the 3 recommendations, the first is around our Dale Carnegie program. It's on slide 12, if we want to move forward to slide 12. And then 2 more, please. And 1 more. That one. It's the Dale Carnegie program. This one focuses on general communications, people skills, developing greater teams and culture. And with it, we drive an ROI project with the group that attends in order to provide return on investment for the county, as well as then for the participants in the return of the skills they develop. We also have a program around, what if people have the wrong habit in their leadership, which is moving from doing, because we get caught sometimes as leaders in the doing role instead of the leading role, helping people move that and make that shift more successfully if they find themselves in the wrong habit. And the third program helps refine leadership in terms of better processes, methodologies of leadership, so that we can lead more efficiently. So there's 3 different programs encompassed in a long document that we gave you that has a lot of detail. But we didn't want to go into all of the detail today. We wanted to learn what questions we can answer and what level of detail would be of interest.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, for me, I know the conversation started with Mr. Powers and Ms. Loving, so I haven't had a chance to even go through this, but obviously familiar with Dale Carnegie courses in the past. Like you said, these have been around for quite some time, way longer than I've been around, but when you say you actually have you track the results of the ROI, is that like, what ratio is that for, what ROI does the county get back? Because, obviously we're not public or private industry, so ROI is not really something that we look at
Right.
all the time. We all obviously have to have a return on our investment, but
Yeah.
how do you track that for government?
Yeah, so what we do in governmental spaces is we focus on greater efficiencies, effectiveness, or cost savings. And so the way that we organize the program is to look at what is the investment for the program, and usually we take approximately a 3 times amount per person that we would want as a return. And the goal is by driving greater effectiveness, greater cost savings or efficiencies. So, for example, I can let you tell it, one of the recent organizations we're dealing with right now is Alamogordo Public Schools, and Victor's had a lot of experience with them.
Alamogordo School is rated like one of the worst schools in New Mexico. And as a result of that, Holloman Air Force Base was going to move out of Alamogordo. And Dr. Moore was a principal, and he took over as superintendent. He realized that if the Holloman Air Force moved out, Alamogordo almost became a ghost town. So he made a lot of changes, made changes to improve the system and so forth. He went from one of the worst to the 3rd best school in New Mexico. And when I'm making all those changes, he says, I need to basically get a team going in the same direction. So he realized he was doing some team building exercises. But people were just going through the motions. It was not getting the results. So he called on us, and we went and worked with him. We worked with mostly the administration. We had 16 other people in administration, including Dr. Moore and this deputy superintendents. We were so successful, he said, well, this is what we need. So as a result, we went down to the different departments. We had people from transportation. We had people from custodians and so forth from together, and they got similar results. As a result, July the 18th, I believe, we're going to start with the principals. We're going to work with the principals to help the culture go, and then we're going to go into other department heads and put another class together. Basically what he wants to accomplish, he has turned that place around from one of the worst ones to one of the best schools in the district, in the state. And he realized the challenges that he's going to have, and he turned to us to help him overcome those challenges, to make a stronger team, to implement those changes, because he's having some resistance with the changes.
And kind of what was the time frame? And I realize that every time frame is going to be different to whatever circumstance arises, but what was that time frame?
8 weeks.
8 weeks, wow.
Right. Yeah, we met for 8 weeks, and once a week. And then once a week, we met for 3 hours. We worked with all the administration, and I worked with all the custodians and so forth. The reason we went 8 weeks, because it takes time for people to change habits and so forth. And also, we're talking behavior change. When people go through a team building exercise, it sounds good. However, what happens by the end of the week? And what he realized is by us going in through 8 weeks, it got the team closer together like they never gotten before. And the results were there.
Okay.
So another example of where we look at, like with the return on investment initiatives, we also focus on what are some of the challenges that can be happening across the organization. So for instance, one of our customers right now, it is a for-profit, but they're focused on retention. Their challenge is we're losing people, and it's costly, both in loss of the knowledge base, but also in the time to go recruit and find other people to help drive that initiative in that organization. So part of the return on investment we're doing with them is all people have their own project they work on from their specific department, but it's all with the understanding of how are we going to drive greater retention. So they all have the same theme to the projects, even though they individually work within their department on what has meaning inside their department. So it works really well. So we can work on it from an organization basis, or we can work on it as a more individual to just say, let them pick individually in their department.
We mentioned about retention. What was happening in Alamogordo is that Alamogordo is a very nice town, but it's hard for them to recruit people, especially principals. And so they found out that this program is going to help them recruit people, because people know people, and then the word's going to go out that they're a team, and people working together. Hopefully, that's going to help them keep the people together and brings more people. They want to be part of a team and care for the outdoors, because that's what attracts people to Alamogordo, is the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In your pricing, it says large groups, very large groups. What's the number? Is there a cutoff number? Or?
Yeah, typically we go with about 25 people
Okay.
as an average. Some groups are around 20, some as much as 30. We try not to go much over that, just because we want the individual time with people during the sessions. If they get too large, it is very difficult. So the pricing that we provided is in alignment with our greater corporations GSA rate that is then allowable on a municipal level.
Is it, when you put on a program, is it person-to-person, Zoom meetings, or how do you accommodate that?
Yeah, we typically do in person, but then we also have the capability to do live online Zoom type meetings. We've done those for over 12 years, and so we do both regularly. Sometimes we even do blended, where we'll do some sessions in an online format and then some sessions in person. It depends upon the results desired and the group and their proximity.
Yeah, because we have certain departments that work 24 hours and shift work, and it'd be difficult to balance that out.
Yeah, and we had discussed with Mr. Powers and Ms. Loving that we're happy to work at different times of day as well as different days of the week to make it most convenient for those attending.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why, I hadn't even gotten there yet. I'm slowly thumbing through this, but there's a lot here to kind of just quickly glance at, so.
Yeah, we tried to provide
Uh,
high levels as well as detail, so you
Mhm.
could choose the level of detail.
And commissioners, I did tell them to, or I asked them to get this to us well ahead of budgeting season, which they have done. So
Right.
you've
Yeah.
got time to look it over.
And I have to be truthful, I read Dale Carnegie's books back in the 60s, and that was the end of it. There was nowhere, I found these at the library, and that was all the experience I had. And I didn't know you were still around.
Yeah, it's wonderful to work with organizations and continue to have that longevity. On the prior slide, one of the things that we show that we included in the packet is a golden book.
Mhm.
And this is the encapsulation of the books that you read, How to Win Friends and
Yes.
Influence People, and then
There you
How to
go.
Stop Worrying and Start Living. This is a piece that we provide regularly as well as with all of our programs because it encapsulates all of the critical skills that we recommend people utilize in their communications and in their people interactions.
That book that you read, it happens to be the second most popular book ever published. Obviously, we know what the first one is, the Bible.
Yeah, it was almost new when I had it, you know.
The Bible?
Yeah, that one too. Yeah.
Jack, I'm glad you have a sense of humor.
What was that, early 60s? I was not even.
Yeah, you weren't,
I
don't
wasn't
worry
even
about
potty
it. Yeah.
trained, so.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
You weren't literate yet?
No, I probably wasn't reading yet. Okay, any other questions, Commissioners?
I don't have any. We need to go through it and take a really good look and see what we can figure out.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sounds good.
We appreciate you coming in.
If you start a course like this, it's obviously tailored to our group.
Yes.
Whatever, if it's a large group or, you know, any of these three rates here, when do they start? Are they like typical colleges, schools, or do you just set it forward and move it?
We start it when it's convenient for you. So
Okay.
based on the size of the group and the timing, time of week, we'll work with you. And as far as customization, we can stay with off-the-shelf delivery, which is the standard product, and then we tailor the delivery part of it, or we can also customize the actual materials themselves.
So it's kind of like an online class, basically, other than it's in person. Is that kind of what I'm,
I'm not quite sure what you mean by online class.
well, it's in-person class, but it could be up to 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever you tailor the need to.
So the standard programs we gave you were each 8 weeks long that are in the program. And we then, from there, can customize other solutions that have varying lengths. So there's times where we can teach it in 3 solid days. There's times where we can do workshops that are just, you know, a few workshops here and there. We have a wide curriculum of capability. This was the curriculum based on the needs mentioned that we narrowed it to, that we thought would have the greatest impact and provide the greatest return and long-term result. Because as
Okay.
we know, as you probably experienced, people grow the most when they have the chance to go use tools and then come back and get some more, instead of just be pushed all at once with things. And humans don't change habits easily, so we work on how to help them do that.
No, they do not.
Yeah.
And-
understand, yeah.
And Cindy, did you say that you had, well, you didn't say in this presentation, but in a previous conversation, you've done some work with the city of Farmington?
Yeah, Victor, go ahead.
Yes, we have under my supervision, so we operate the entire area. I had a sales lady that was working with the city of Farmington. Yes, I was involved, but not directly because I was overlooking at it. Basically, I owned the franchise, and we had one of my staff members.
Thank you.
Yeah. We've also had members from the city of Clovis attend our programs, worked with different fire groups in the area of Clovis, the fire chief and others that have attended our programs, and really enjoyed some of the pieces there. So it's been fun.
One of the things that I think is very important, and that is who have we worked with and what did they have to say about us. We'd be glad to supply you a list of people, even in Alamogordo schools, that you can connect with.
Yeah, because I've also had the chance to work like in our high impact leadership programs with El Paso Water and Utilities, as well as many branches of our military, the different laboratories. So we have a wide expanse of understanding of different government entities over time.
Are you doing anything currently or in the future locally here in the big broader area, I guess?
Not on a public basis. Most of the work that we do is in-house or in
Okay.
specific with an organization themselves. Since the pandemic, we've found the majority of our customers want to work just specifically having us hone directly to their teams versus on a public basis. And some of it is because of proximity.
Right.
They can choose how their people attend. Yeah, so just yesterday, we were actually delivering for the Colorado Agricultural Leadership Program, and we were at the Visitor Center with the session half day, and we delivered on delivery of impact. So it was presentation skills for all of the people attending that program as they began to focus on delivering their projects later this year. So it was a lot of fun.
Okay,
All right,
a lot to look through,
thank you,
Um,
sir.
and we will definitely get through it, and obviously we'll start our budgeting here in the next couple months.
I recommend after you get your audit, which Chris Majors
Yeah.
is here working on.
Yeah, we're looking at that, so.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't have any other questions, Commissioner, do you have
No,
any?
I don't.
All
Okay,
right.
all right, well,
Thank
thank you
you.
both,
We sure appreciate it.
yeah,
Please let us
Appreciate
know if we can provide any other further information.
okay.
We
Will do
appreciate
it.
your time. Thank
bet.
you.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a conversation with the Lodger'stax Committee discussion, and this is gonna be related to HB 221117, which was just signed into law this year. So basically, the conversation, you know, we kind of alluded to it a little bit, Brian, when you came in March,
I think it was
April?
March, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Anyway, whenever it was. This was one of those bills that was being discussed in the legislation at that time. Since then, a lot of counties are actually putting this on their ballot. It does have to be on the November ballot, to be able to do the other things with it that it says that you can do, specifically for housing, for childcare, for tourism. I mean, it's not super broad, but there are some things here that can be added to it. So for anything to get put on the ballot, has to come to us first, or you guys have to request it to be put on the ballot. I know that I can tell you that we are having a lot of challenges with housing, and specifically workforce housing. I don't know if you guys are seeing it in that industry, but if we don't have enough workforce, we can't provide the people to take care of the heads in the beds. In the past, it was restricted specifically to just that, and there was no other way that we could do that. With the new resolution that we signed, thank you again for bringing that to our attention, for the state to be able to get the Lodger'stax on the Airbnb and the VRBOs. What we saw this year, what you presented to us just a month or so ago, that fund has grown significantly, and that doesn't even reflect what we're going to receive from VRBO and Airbnb. So this basically is a discussion with you guys, you know, which direction do you see this heading? Where is it going? Is it a good idea?
Bad idea?
What are your thoughts? Because we're struggling with housing right now for workforce equally. And if we can't get it or have ways of moving it forward, I don't know how we're gonna keep them there. So what's your opinions, your ideas, your thoughts?
I could probably start with it, since I've been around this committee for a long time. I remember Commissioner Copenhagen from quite a few years back. And we've kind of operated for the lodges, and most of the time, we didn't really have that much money. And if a fire starts, and it's so ironic that we got smoke coming in now, so I get real nervous because as soon as we have a fire or the train stops, then, you know, all bets are off because a lot of the business is going to disappear until after it clears up. So lodgers' tax revenue is sometimes something of a gamble because we can't project what it's going to be. We, well, since I've been involved, we always tried to keep back a contingency to make so we could move ahead and for the lean years, because some of our people that are involved with the tourist industry, which is mainly the chambers, Mesa Verde Country, and so forth, they sort of depend on this money more so than most people do. It's not so much the workers, because what it is the lodgers, they find the people to work. And we don't really get involved with their housing per se or their child care. This is kind of a problem with the lodgers that is a little bit beyond us. And I have to be careful how I say this, because a lot of this comes from the I-70 corridor. Most of the people I deal with up there, I talk to, they can't afford to live up there and work up there. And if you're in Vail, where some of the people have 3 houses or their second house or whatever it might be, they're taking up all the oxygen in the space. And the people doing the actual work in the restaurants and the lodging facilities, they have to live, like in Telluride, you have to live, what is that, saw pit or somewhere, and come up there and work and what have you. I don't want to discount this. I pulled out something from the city council for Durango, and they went a different path last year. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm just going to say a few words about it, because they're at the other extreme. They're as close as I can get to I-70 kind of thinking, because of purgatory and so forth. And last April, they had a ballot issue where they raised their lodger's tax from 1.9 to 5.25, and it passed. And then they went into the game of, I shouldn't say it like that maybe, they went into the process of how they would divvy up these new revenues. And we're talking like $900,000 is what they finally got to as of the writing of this, and this was from January, and I didn't have a chance this last week to check to see how close they came. So they're dealing with $900,000. And they wanted to have it broken up into 55% was to be spent on sustainable tourism efforts. And that sustainable phrase, and I think Brian can speak more to it, because Mesa Verde Country is doing some things around that. And then they wanted to have 20% on transportation. And then they wanted to have 14% because the arts and culture had to get involved. And then they wanted to have 11% to be determined by the city council, and the final 2% for administration. one good thing they said about it, and I have copies of this if you want to read it, and I'll pass it out afterwards, is that they would review this every year. And if we do anything as the committee with you commissioners, and by the way, you are officio, how do you say it, ex officio members of the committee, according to our bylaw. So, would be one of the things I would like to talk about in our discussions, because I'm not sure all of these people, from the people on the I-70 corridor and Durango, I'm putting them together because that's your ski industry. See this as a real solution, because Durango, in my observation, has always had a housing problem. They never have enough housing, and it's imbalanced. And I'm not knocking the housing proponents, but if we were to do this, and you know, if we had, like we have this last year, around $350,000 to play with, and we took $264,000 and gave it to the people that depend on the monies for promoting tourism, we wouldn't have much left for all these other things, like housing and childcare. Now, I don't know how you do housing and childcare. I checked with somebody up in Snowmass with Anderson Ranch. And the two people I talked to I know well, they teach there. They're pulling down over $100,000 a year apiece, but childcare takes care of one salary, and their housing is given to them. But Anderson Ranch has a real big base of, how should I say, donors from the movie industry and a few other places. So our challenge here, in my estimation, is how do we fit in this idea of using lodgers' money? We're not a La Plata County and Durango. We're also not, in my past, I've spoke with the people in the lodging industry near Nuclear and that area, and their commissioners are so far behind you guys as far as working with the dollars that they didn't do anything with it. It was worse than Airbnb not telling the state we need to give it to back to the county. So, and I'll probably stop there and let Brian say a couple things about how that money for sustainability and stuff and what we did this year as to how to do better at selecting the people asking for the tax dollars, the largest tax dollars. And I think that's where we got to start from.
So I don't think that this that this bill makes us do anything with it.
No, it
I
doesn't.
think it is just if we do put it on the ballot, because it does have to go to a ballot for us to do anything else with this. It gives us the authorization if we see the need arise and we can come up with something. It doesn't mean that we're gonna change anything at all tomorrow. And the other thing too is that, like the city of Durango, which you just
Use
gave
an
to us,
example.
so we're functioning with just the county lodger's tax. The city of Cortez also has its own lodger's tax, which is two different pots of, totally different pots of money.
Right.
So this just allows the counties, well, I think it actually says along with the municipalities, the opportunity if the need arises. And I agree, we don't have anything like Vail. I mean,
No, we
not-
can't compete with those counties.
Summit County, Vail County, it's not even close what we're dealing with. But I think more of the question is it something we put on the ballot to give us the opportunity to move forward with it if we do see the need? It doesn't, the way I've read it, it doesn't say that we have to do anything, but if we don't put it on a ballot and it's not voted, then we don't have that opportunity at all. Is the way I read it, but here again, I'm not an attorney. I'll look to the attorney to give me the interpretation on that, but when this was being discussed at CCI, that's why it was so appealing to like Summit County, Vail, a lot of those Front Range County that are ski town USA up there on that I-70 corridor, because they can't get anybody to live in their little townships because they can't afford it. So unless I'm wrong, Ian, I don't.
No,
think it-
your reading's correct. We did discuss this at the county attorney's conference this last week. And so it is permissive. I mean, it's something you
Right.
put on the ballot and then it gives you the option.
Right, it's just an option. It doesn't mean that what we're doing today, we have to change it at all, and your recommendations have to change. It just says that, hey, by the way, if we see something that all of a sudden we actually have some funding to do or to take care of, we actually can do it and move forward. Because if we see it and we haven't done it, then we're holding an empty bag. So that's really the, the conversation that we're having today is what are you guys' thoughts as far as just, do we do it or do we not do it? And like I said, there's nothing that says we're gonna change what we're doing. And we're not trying to say we need to change it. We're just saying what are your guys' thoughts for the direction here?
I appreciate that, gentlemen, and thank you to the whole team. Ian, thanks for the information on that. That's what I've heard from other people. I'm glad to know that that's the same thing you heard as well. So what I would like to say, if I could, and this might take just a minute, I'll be as quick as I can though, an informed workforce and a workforce that lives in the area where they work provides a consistent delivery of service to the people that are trying to deliver service in that area. That's the number one benefit that a business would have from having people get to live in the area that they represent and work in. There's a tie to that community. People have a much more of a stake in the community. They have a longer term view of what they do in the community and how that affects things down the road when they're allowed to work where they, or where they're allowed to reside where they work. We've seen in many places in the state of Colorado over the past 40 years or so, most notably in Boulder some 30, 35 years ago, Boulder started to grow at an enormously quick rate with the high-tech boom. And at that time, I actually had a hotel of my own in Boulder, the largest hotel in Boulder. And at that point in time, although I was employed as a rooms division executive with that company, I could not begin to afford to live in the town of Boulder. I lived in Morrison, Colorado, and commuted 45 minutes up the Highway 93. And I realized at that point in time that this was not a sustainable model and that there were going to be a lot of issues that would come from that going down the road for a lot of different communities, not just Boulder. Boulder has taken some stances to change that and to affect some positivity there, and they've had some success with that. But at the end of the day, as a general statement, the whole state is still faced with the same problem. And it's important to remember, if I may point out, some of the places that have a lot of money for this type of thing. Visit Estes Park is the tourist organization that governs Estes Park area. In 2021, they collected $3.5 million in Lodger'stax revenue. 3.5 million is a pretty big slice of pie, and there's a lot that they can do with that. Even so, they are trying to balance how much they want to advertise for outside impact and how much they want to spend to get people to live and stay in the community in which they're operating. The point being that when you have that much money on the table, you can certainly use a percentage of it without it really affecting the main mission or the main goal of what our guidelines are. We don't have that luxury right now. We also don't have a lot of problems that come with that, so we're in a pretty good space. With regard to what you're saying as far as taking this to the voters, I understand completely, and I understand how it's written, and I believe I understand what the message is. I believe it would be effective to take this to the voters as a preemptive strike so that you have the flexibility to do what you may need to do, because in my perception, when things get even tighter in the housing market, we're not going to have the luxury of time to go to the voters and then come back and do something. We need to have that already in our wallet, in our arsenal, ready to rock and roll. So I would encourage that. Then it steps into how do you stipulate that, how do you word that. It's going to be a lot more general than it is specific, because you're just trying to lay the course and give yourself the opportunity to do what you need to do. I'm sure that with the talents of Ian and other people in other communities similar to ours around the state, that can be determined and you can do that effectively. The concern that I have right now is something that is represented not only by the local agencies in town, but everything in the county as well that has anything to do with tourism. it's important to remember that of the money that the commissioners have so graciously and religiously and consistently allocated to the tourist organizations and the tourist effort in our county, a lot of that goes to organizations that are not defined strictly as a tourist or a visitor information bureau or what have you. Mesa Verde Country is defined that way, and Mesa Verde Country benefits from the wonderful blessings that you have provided to the company, as well as the Lodger'stax that the city provides, as well as other monies that the city provides, as well as private grants and state grants, and there's a whole host of different revenue streams that come into it for us. A lot of the places like chambers of commerce are supposed to be membership driven, and I'm not casting aspersions there. It doesn't really work that way, certainly in a small community. And so over the years, we have a pretty good history of funding Dolores Chamber, Mancos Chamber, often the Cortez Chamber as well. And that money isn't technically being spent for tourism or to promote that. It's really being spent to operate and maintain the chambers of commerce. We understand that and we accept that because that's how it works in a smaller community. And those chambers have a person-to-person hands-on contact with everybody who comes through looking for tourism opportunities. They see things in the long term, the short term, and they're very well engaged with that. The best example of that would be the Dolores Chamber, if I could point them out specifically. It's important to remember that the way that you take this to the voters and the way that it becomes worded is going to either tie our hands or free us up considerably when the time comes to utilize this. And I would like to advocate very strongly that we continue to remember that we should possibly build in some of the static grant requests or some of the static opportunities that exist year over year for this, because we can't make a sudden change without it affecting things very negatively, like we did back in 1990. And anybody who lived through the 90s remembers when Colorado got out of the tourism game for a very short time. It was very short-lived, and it was deleterious to everything that we've ever done as far as tourism is concerned in the state of Colorado. And it took us 15 years to really earn our place back into the conversation nationally. It took us almost 20 years to earn our way back in internationally. So it's a long process to get back into that. Having said all that, and I apologize for being so talkative today, the bottom line to me is that if we're going to remain competitive as a community that vies for and collects and makes memories from tourists, and we capture their dollars when they come through. We never look at those tourists. We never see them as a one-time visit. We see them as a 3, 4, 5, 6 times visit. We see them as a relocation opportunity. We see them as someone who might come here and relocate when they retire. Then they become valid as a member of our volunteer force, and our volunteer force is incredibly important to us and very rich in this community. And so there are a lot of different ways to look at that. But at the end of the day, I would advocate very strongly for the flexibility, however you word this, to allow us to revisit on an annual basis the goals and the directives that we see, and to kind of have a steering committee for this, if you will, to keep it pointed in about the right direction. We need to be agile and we need to be nimble. There may come a time when suddenly a decision has to be made, you know, in the late summer or the early fall at a different time of year than when we're typically going through the grant process. And I understand that, but I really think having some framework is going to serve us the very best. I am not opposed at all to using some of this money for the things that have been outlined in this bill. I'm thrilled that it's written in a way that allows the community to use the money the way you choose to. Who knows better than how to spend the money than the people right here at this table? But at the same time, selling that on the street and having people understand that we're not another Estes Park, we're not another Vail or another Aspen. We don't currently suffer from the over-tourism or the overuse of resource. We currently have an intelligent approach. We have a modified and measured approach to sustainable tourism and responsible visitation, which are things that we focus on very much. Responsible visitation is typically on the visitor. That's how they engage when they come here and interact with us and our events and our activities. Sustainable tourism is how we try to set up our organizations, how we try to market ourselves, how we try to execute delivery of service for events and activities so that people can see that they're participating in a sustainable way that doesn't harm the environment or harm any of the offerings that we have that make us such a unique place. Having said all that, I would just like to thank you for including us on this conversation and giving us a chance to have a voice with this. I think this is important. I look forward to the day when we have $3.5 million that we can work with, and I'm sure that that day will come if the voters agree. But in the meantime, it's a gift. It's something that is very nice to have in our toolbox. I think that just because we can doesn't mean we should, and if we're going to, we need to be really cautious about laying out steps along that roadmap so that we can do this the most intelligent way for our unique community.
Sure. And one thing I want to highlight also is that by statute, the county cannot go over 2%.
That's correct.
So the municipalities, like you stated earlier, Lee, they voted in a 5 point something. The municipalities can do that because they are home rule. So by statute, our lodger's tax is at 1.9 and it cannot exceed 2%, period.
That's correct, yes, sir.
So
We've even looked at
we're
trying to
never
raise
gonna-
it, and that extra 1/10%, it's not worth it to go through all the expense and the steps
Cool.
and the negativities.
Correct,
Yes,
so we just left it at the 1.9. So there are a lot of differences between what we can do because of the statute and what home rule can do. And they can get that, we cannot. But this is more just a conversation, since it is permissive, you know, do we do it in case there is an opportunity? I don't think any of us up here are saying at all that we're looking at wanting to change the function of what you guys bring forward to us, because, you know, we are gonna go with your recommendations. We typically don't. Although in 2019, we got scrutinized pretty hard when we had no money and some things were getting defunded. I think we got our heads pretty well cut off in 2019.
Yeah, but we survived.
Yeah.
Well,
You did pretty good, you did pretty good too.
we did survive, but, you know, I guess, is this just laying the blueprint out so that we can look at it and, it is there in case we ever have to use it. And I don't think there's anything that says in the next 2 years that we couldn't put it on the ballot then, so.
No, so I think, to paraphrase what I'm hearing from everybody, is that right now it doesn't appear that there's enough from this to make a dent in the housing situation, but that everybody's open to reconsidering it on an annual basis.
We can reconsider on an annual basis. It'll be every 2 years before we can put it on a ballot.
Sure.
So we don't,
But it doesn't sound like there's much interest in changing the way things are currently operating at this point.
I think this is more one of the bills that came out that's in statute, that before we make any decisions, we're gonna ask the people that are doing the work as far as the recommendations for us, because we don't see what you guys see.
I appreciate that.
We don't.
If I may, I'm sorry, if I may, it might be a wise consideration to take a thought about doing some type of a study. I don't mean to just throw money and put stuff away and bury it under cover, but it's so important that we're having this conversation about housing right now, and it's so wonderful that the state of Colorado is behind us to a certain extent in their own way with this. I don't want to lose the momentum, the impetus that we have from that right now, because that's very important, and I can't buy that. So maybe there's some way that as a group we can figure out how to really get our dollars out of this from a PR standpoint in a very positive way, without doing anything that's too restrictive from an actual legislative standpoint. That's just a thought that I have, and it might be something to consider. So.
Okay.
Sorry, Lee.
I have to disagree with you on one point. When Colorado got out of the tourism business back in the 90s, I don't think we've recovered yet, because the surrounding states jumped in with both feet.
Very, very well said, and you're correct. You are correct.
Okay, well, that's all we have. You know, I did bring this bill up to you in March or whenever, and didn't know if it was gonna pass or not, but now it's passed, it's been signed, and it is in law. So something else to think about, you know. It's permissive. We do have the flexibility if we do put it on the ballot and it's approved. If not, you know, it doesn't really change what we're doing right now.
And as a committee, we do check things, and we kind of like go all around the state as to, with contacts, trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. So we're not operating in the dark, and we'll try and bring you the best information we can, Commissioner. That's just the way Brian thinks, that's the way I think. The more information we have, the more we can give to you.
Okay.
We appreciate that very much.
Gentlemen, I have a very brief follow-up, if I may, and if this is
You got all the time in the world.
I just wanted to mention, with regard to the previous guests, Cindy and Victor, back in the 90s in Boulder, I had the distinct pleasure and honor, after I won all the pens and won all the plaques, of winning Dale Carnegie's highest award for leadership. And that was a tremendous benefit to me. It was a tremendously long program and something to really study for and work with and go through on a day-to-day basis. And it was one of the most impactful things in my career that I look back on now ever. And it was a tremendous benefit, a tremendous opportunity. So from one voice in the room, I would like to very strongly say I support what they do. If the people that join that class choose to do it as a winner or as someone who's going to learn and become a leader, it is nothing that can stop them once they do that. And I strongly support that and believe in that. And I appreciate that you gentlemen are open to considering something like that. So I appreciate that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We try to consider everything. Not
Yes,
not
sir.
that we can necessarily pay for anything,
That's
but
right. That's
we
right.
can consider everything. So, all right, well then I guess what I'm hearing right now is that we've had the discussion, we're aware of it, you're aware of the bill. It doesn't seem that we need to do anything at this point in time, and we'll revisit in a year. Although we're not necessarily making decisions today, we're just having a conversation.
Thank you for
Okay.
including us. Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
for listening to us.
You bet.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
guys,
in.
appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that is all that we have on our agenda, so we will adjourn this meeting at 5:21 PM. Thank you all.